Welcome back to Keeping It Real Estate. I'm your host, Mike Roeder. We're excited to dive into today's episode, which is the best of 2024. So over these last 12 months, we've been packed with some incredible guests, some power conversations about the ever-changing world of commercial real estate. And today we're kicking off part one of our best of 2024 series, revisiting some of the most memorable moments from the podcast, clips that really stood out as the absolute best of the best. So whether you're a seasoned investor, a beginner, or you just love learning from the best, this episode is a must listen. Stay tuned for part two as well of the best of 2024 series, which is coming next week. So sit back, grab a notepad, and get ready to revisit the highlights of an amazing year on Keeping It Real Estate. Let's dive in. So first off, we're revisiting one of the most insightful conversations we had this year. Nick Fluellen from Marcus & Millichap joined us earlier in 2024 to break down the DFW multifamily market with unparalleled expertise. He's had over 592 transactions totaling more than $5.1 billion in value. And Nick, he's a true veteran in multifamily investing. So in this clip, Nick dives into the challenges and the opportunities in today's market, offering a really clear-eyed perspective on navigating a rapidly changing landscape. So here's Nick.
I want to discuss a little bit, Nick, with you about the DFW market as a whole. You know, what we saw in 2021, 2022, the pricing come up, and now obviously we're in a multifamily real estate recession pullback. What do you see happening in 2024, specifically in Dallas-Fort Worth, with asset prices, valuations, cap rates?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's challenging. We've actually just launched a few deals here in the last week or two, and actually, you and I spoke before we started recording today about another deal coming soon. So I mean, there are deals that are going to happen, that have to happen, that need to happen for various reasons. I think where the challenge is right now is people who buy multifamily know when rates rise, interest rates rise, cap rates rise. It makes sense if you are paying more to service your debt, you have to buy a property for less in order for the math to work. And so the higher the cap rate, the lower the purchase price. So I think what's happened is when, we did a lot of transactions when interest rates were in the low threes, mid threes, high threes, and cap rate, and with 2, 3, 4, 5 years interest only. And, that math worked great. And what we've seen is an unprecedented run up in rates, and that nobody anticipated. And so fast forward when you have short-term bridge loans with a 2-year term or 3-year term, and people are now at the point where they need to refinance or do something, and again, you could be the smartest investor in the world. And I mean, there are a lot of really, really smart, savvy people that are all in this exact same position. This wasn't a big mistake that someone made, or I can't believe you did this. This is what everyone was doing, including the most seasoned owners and operators out there. But when rates are now double, in some cases, what they were 2.5 years ago, and that math doesn't really work that well. And so that's what we're kind of dealing with right now. Is there's a lot of people trying to figure out, hey, do I just take the loss and move on? Do I extend and figure out a way to kick the can down the road until interest rates come back down and therefore cap rates come back down? What's the right play here, right? And so, and there's all different sorts of opinions and thoughts about that. But that's what we're sorting through right now. Our activity is really strong on the deals that we have out. There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of people looking. There's a lot of people that would love to buy deals. There's a lot fewer that actually do make sense, though. And so that's, where we were doing 70, 80 deals a year, we might do 30, 35, 40, this year, which is actually a very large number of deals relative to most out there. But it just, you feel like you're doing 3 times the work for 1/3 of the income, and that's just the way it is right now. Now, that being said, guys like you and Mike who are actively out looking to get deals done, it's harder right now, right? The debt's not as attractive. Equity is hard. These LPs out there who, and I'm an LP in a whole bunch of deals, Normally I've got deals that are selling every month or two, that I'm an LP in. When the market was fast and furious, you're just constantly churning your money. And never did I have a time where something wasn't in escrow that's being sold. Well, right now, there's just so much fewer deals being sold that LPs aren't recycling their money as much, and they're, the ones that have some liquidity are nervous about it. So those are the challenges, then the headwinds that we're facing in DFW. The good news is people want to be in DFW. They like the way that this is a landlord-friendly state. They like the business environment here. They like the cost of living here. Population growth, job growth, companies are relocating here. There's so many good things, fundamentally speaking, about Dallas. And in fact, if you look at the Marcus and Millichap National Research Report, which is published every year in January, that has Dallas ranked in 2024 as the #1 apartment market in the country. So it's a challenging apartment market, but if you're invested somewhere and you're wondering, hey, how do I stack up, then Dallas is a great place to be invested. And you should feel really good about having money parked here right now, even if you have some short-term hiccups.
Let's turn to another unforgettable conversation from 2024 with the one and only Neal Bawa. He's known as the Mad Scientist of Multifamily. And earlier this year, Neal brought his data-driven brilliance to the podcast. Now, with over 4,400 units and a sharp focus on analytics, Neal broke down what's happening in the multifamily industry right now and why it's an exciting time to be part of the game. This clip showcases his unique ability to turn complex data into actionable insights. Here's Neal. Personally, I think it's a great time to get into the market because you can't predict exactly when the bottom is going to hit. But what do you think is going to happen moving forward with cap rates and pricing on multifamily?
Okay. I'm a quant. I look at numbers all day long and I enjoy the process of looking at numbers and remembering them. But even for a quant, my track record of predicting any sort of bottom or any sort of top has been disastrously bad. Now, I may have predicted the right thing. What I'm trying to point out is I almost always predicted at the wrong time. This is also true of the stock market. If you listen to the people in the stock market that manage the most amount of money, whether it's Vanguard or Warren Buffett, they all are very candid in saying that their ability to time the market is close to zero. So, Vanguard doesn't try and time the market. Warren Buffett doesn't try and time the market. What I find is inexperienced people who give themselves too much credit try and time the market, and they don't track their own calls. It's useful to go back and look at my podcast predictions from 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 years, and 5 years before. And what I can generally summarize it is that I've been warning that prices were too high and people shouldn't buy. So I was right in that. But in terms of when I thought the prices would drop, when I thought the market would turn, I've been just as terrible as just about everybody else I know. So I think that timing the market is actually a fool's errand. It's a fool's errand. And no data, no analytics software exists in the real estate market that can assist you to improve your accuracy significantly. CoStar can't do it, and it's a $17 billion company with immense amounts of data and 1,500 people pouring more data into the software every month. They don't know. And they say they don't know. Point is this. What has worked for people in the last 100 years, whether it's the stock market or Bitcoin or real estate, is understanding when things are cheap. That works. That works very consistently. And to me, things are cheap right now for one very simple reason. Multifamily, over the last, call it 24 months, has, because of this pounding of interest rates by the Fed, right, and this extraordinarily rapid increase in interest rates, has seen a drop in prices, 20 to 30%. But what's interesting is that this drop in prices has come without a drop in income. Net operating income, or NOI, which is the most important single number for multifamily, because it's a business. You base your price based on its income, has not decreased at all in those 24 months. In fact, NOI for 19.6 million units in the United States has actually increased. Small increase in the last 2 years. So you have this weird situation where over the last 24 months, income for multifamily as an asset, a $3 trillion asset in the United States, has gone up and prices have dropped. So all of those price drops have nothing to do with the income of the property. They have entirely to do with interest rates. And interest rates, by their very nature, go up and go down. I don't know when they're going to go up, and I don't know when they're going to go down. But whenever interest rates are extraordinarily high, it makes assets cheap. And whenever interest rates are extraordinarily low, it makes assets ridiculously expensive. So watch a podcast of mine from, let's say, the beginning of 2022, and that's what I'm warning. I'm telling people, don't buy assets. You shouldn't be buying them. Even my students were buying them, which was terrible. I would go out there and say, this is not the right time to buy, because interest rates at the beginning of 2022 were at 4%. So people were buying these kinds of assets, and now all of those assets are in trouble. So today, I think you have an extraordinary opportunity where assets are cheap. I don't know when the bottom is. I'll speculate on the bottom, and I'll tell you that my speculations are usually crap, right? I think multifamily bottoms in Q4 of 2024, right? That might be the bottom. Previously, I thought it was Q2, but because of the economy being so strong, the rate cuts have really been pushed out by 6 months. So I'll say Q4 of 2024. Am I waiting for that? No, because I've been wrong so often with my timing. I know it's cheap. So a lot of investors that are good at this stuff, and I read and I try and learn from them, talk about the smile. The smile is the curve where things start to get cheap. And you know that the next asset you buy might probably be cheaper, and the next one will be cheaper after that. But you know that at some point, some asset that you buy would be the bottom of the market, and then the next one after that would be a little more expensive and a little more expensive. If you buy the smile, right, and that's the only thing you're actually logically capable of, as an average, those assets will do really, really well for those investors. Hopefully, the investors invested in more than one asset, and so they got the benefit of the smile, and that's what you should be telling your investors. But even if they didn't, they got an asset cheaper than it was any time in the last 3 or 4 years. And I think that's good enough. That is all that we are capable of doing. Everything else is just smoke and mirrors and illusion. So I'm buying. I started buying a few months ago. I'm buying assets now. I want to buy an asset every 3 months. If I'm lucky enough, I can buy it with an assumption, which is a superior kind of asset available today, where you basically have somebody that locked in a low interest rate 2 years ago. And so you don't have to deal with today's interest rates. You just get today's discounts. Assumptions are hard to find. Not all of my assets are assumptions, but I'm currently only compensating my acquisitions team on assumption assets, so they don't get their bonuses if it's not an assumption asset, which has made it easier for me to find assumption-based assets. So I think it's not a great time to buy, but it's a good time to buy, right? And it's certainly better than 2 years ago where everyone was saying it's a great time to buy. It's certainly a lot better than that because prices are down. Remember, price cannot change, rates can.
Let's talk a little bit about supply as well. You have a ton of data on supply. Obviously, there's been some oversupply in certain submarkets throughout the country, but you also have permitting that's plummeted in a lot of those markets. And I think when you take a step back, the nation is undersupplied in housing in general. But tell us a little bit more, Neal. What are you seeing?
Supply is a sort of a double-edged sword at this point of time. So that 2024, the year that we are in, has the highest incoming supply of new apartments in this cycle. So, I think the last time we had supply this high was maybe in the 2000s, so maybe at least 15 years ago. I don't know the precise year that had the highest number, but this year's number appears to be somewhere around 600,000 units, depending upon whether I'm quoting CoStar or Yardi Matrix. It's somewhere around 600,000 units of supply. That is usually too much. The US has very high absorption rates for rentals, and I'll explain why our absorption rates are too high. Absorption is good. What that means is as new units come in, they get absorbed into the marketplace very easily. So we have very high absorption. And I'll go ahead and explain the reason. The reason is simply this. In 2013, 45% of American families could afford a starter home. Today, that number is 16. From 45% in 2013 to 16%. Only 16% of Americans can afford the median mortgage today. And that number has never been this low. So this is the least affordable, that it's been lower than 2008, by the way, because we have extremely high single family prices. They haven't come down. They haven't adjusted. They're flat. Since the interest rates started going up, single family has been flat where multifamily has been down. And so the prices are still high, and then interest rates are very high in the sevens, for those buying single family. So if only 16% of Americans can actually afford a median home price, a lot of people will end up going to apartments. So absorption rates are very high, but they're still not high enough this year, and only this year. So we're absorbing somewhere around 450,000 units, and we have 600,000 units. And so the only way to absorb the remaining units is concessions. So most markets in the United States are seeing high concessions. Phoenix is around 7 weeks. Salt Lake City is around 9 or 10 weeks of concessions. What that means is if you sign a 1-year lease, you get 7 weeks for free or 9 weeks for free, right? So that concession means people who are in Class B or B plus apartments are able to move up to a brand new Class A building and get a better quality, but they're not paying anymore, right? Because they're typically paying 20%, 25% more, but they're also getting 2 months of concessions, so it's evening out in terms of annual lease cost. They're paying the same as Class B plus. So those Class B pluses, they are having to drop their prices, and as they drop their price, right, they start competing with the Class Cs, which now start seeing pricing pressure. So this is the way it cascades down. There's this belief in our industry, a faulty, nonsensical belief, that Class Cs are not affected when incoming inventory comes in. That's a ridiculous and silly idea. What is true, actually, what is the right thing to say is Class C is not initially affected. So when incoming supply comes in, it affects the existing Class A properties first, which then affect the B pluses, which then affect the Bs, which then affect the C pluses, which then affect the Cs, right? So it's a cascading process, and it takes a significant amount of time before Class C starts to lose occupancy because there's a whole bunch of brand new units that have come into the marketplace. And so some markets are now beginning to see that impact on Class C rents. We're seeing an overall impact on Class C rents now, and they're pretty flat. Some markets, they're going up. Some markets, they're actually down. So that supply is too much for this year. But actually, it's not too much, because the United States has gone from a shocking 40+% of Americans being able to afford homes to 16%. And so we desperately need rental housing. And so ironically, what's bad for the industry in 2024 is really good for America. We needed those units, and they arrived at just the right time, because right now Americans are getting pounded by inflation, and one of the things they're not getting pounded by is rent inflation. There is no rent inflation in the United States in the last 12 months. Rents haven't gone up, rents haven't gone down. They're the same, but people are getting paid 4% more. So they're getting pounded on food, they're getting pounded on oil, they're not getting pounded on rent anymore. And because there's so much incoming supply, they probably won't get pounded on for rent in the next 12 months either, because we still have to dissipate this new inventory, which we successfully will, because there's so much absorption right now because of mortgages being that high. So far, we're having a tough time raising our rents, and we're going to have a tough time raising our rents in the next 6 to 9 months. But there's this weird belief in the industry that we may not be able to raise our rents because properties are going to sell for cheap. That has nothing to do with rents. You can sell properties for $10 and they will still charge market rents. So just because there's some distress in the multifamily market space, people think that somehow that's connected to rents. No, rents are only connected to supply. Markets with low supply, rents will rise. Markets with high supply, rents will be flat or slightly negative. And that's what we're seeing, and that's what we expect to see for the rest of 2024. There's a lot of people saying 2025 has no supply. That's not true. That is not true. Supply in 2025 is still robust, and it's likely to be in balance. So 2024, too much supply. 2025, balance. 2026 is what is affected. When I'm looking at pipelines, it's clear to me that a lot of projects that should have started construction this year in 2024 didn't start construction, which is why the supply incoming pipeline for 2026, it looks really weak. It's very likely that in 2026, demand will be high, supply will be low, and 2026, especially the second half, should be phenomenal for rent growth, because it's just not enough supply. And so, too many renters will be fighting over too few units. And then starting 2027, I expect the supply situation to improve and start to build up again in a new cycle. So that's what I see. A lot of this data is really coming from CoStar charts and Yardi matrix charts, and everyone's thinking, I don't think that we see a huge decline in supply in 2025. You see, obviously it reduces from the peak in 2024, but it's really 2026 that we are affecting with these high interest rates.
And finally, we're revisiting one of the most powerful and inspiring moments of the year with Brady McDonald, CEO of Barefoot Land Co. Brady joined us earlier in 2024 and left us with unforgettable lessons about resilience, perseverance, and pushing through life's toughest moments. In this clip, Brady shares how the lessons he's learned as an endurance athlete translate into business, relationships, and life. From overcoming financial challenges to redefining himself as a leader, his insights are a masterclass in mindset and determination. If you've ever wondered what it takes to thrive under pressure and achieve greatness, this one's for you. Here's Brady.
Another thing that really stood out to me when you were speaking at a previous mastermind that we were both at is you said, don't ease up today because you may need the advantage tomorrow. And, that's so truthful in business, in life, in your family relationships. What does that mean to you, and how has that served you as you went through your real estate career and, now getting into these marathons?
Yeah. And I mean, I think so. The idea is like, at times life is going to get hard. Right. And so what an average person will do, a mediocre person, like most people, when things get hard, they recess, they ease up, they set back, they take it easy and try to let the pain just go away. And it actually doesn't just occur that way. It actually, it lingers longer until you forge through the pain, right? Or through the hardship. And so that's ultimately what I learned through doing, in these hard races. Is I watched it, even at these extreme elite levels, there is levels of mediocrity. And so when things got hard during the races, people started settling down. They eased up. They got in the car. They stopped. They had to start stretching. They had to put blankets on themselves. They had to eat more. They had to do all this thing. And so what our strategy was we were just going to forge through. We weren't going to stop. We weren't going to slow down. And what that did was that gave us a competitive advantage, moments in time that compounded over 3 days to actually be able to come into third place male. But if we didn't do that on day one, thinking that we just had a chance on day three, that's what we wouldn't have happened, right? And life is no different. We've been in a situation not too long ago, within the last 14 months, where our company was bleeding $300,000 to $800,000 a month, and it got that bad because I was in that position where I'm just going to hopefully outweight this. Hopefully this storm just goes away, right? And I was being very average. I mean, I was doing what most people would do. But the moment I made the conscious decision that this is not my fate, I'm going to actually get myself sober. I'm going to clean up. I'm going to focus on fitness. I'm going to forge through this intentionally really fast. I solved my problem. One of my mentors, Ken Clothier, he gave me a goal to put $1 million in the bank. And this is in a situation where I'm bleeding $300,000 to $800,000 a month. I've never had $1 million in the bank, ever. And he's like, I want you in 3 months to put $1 million in the bank. And I ended up being able to put 3.6 million in the bank. But that was because I didn't ease up. I actually started to go harder. I went harder during the hard times. And that is ultimately what has forged me through to the position I am in today, right? And not just in financial situation, but relationships and fitness and everything else. And I think you should put something very, very hard every single year. I think there should be something so hard on your calendar that you're scared that you'll fail every single year, right? And because you will be, especially if you surround yourself with the right people, possibly get a coach, and create a plan and get super consistent and have a strategy, you'll get after it. And whether you fail or not, I mean, failure is just, you probably won't. I mean, it's just a level of success. So yeah, and you're forced to grow, right? And so, especially us as adults, like the hardest thing oftentimes as adults, the hardest things that we ever did was when we were in high school or in college or, shortly after that. Right. And because then we get into work life and we get into socializing and having kids. And then it's just like let's kind of cruise. We're on cruise control. But it's because, I found that I really had to re-identify as a new person. Right. And because the person that I believed who I was like the older Brady, like the one that from, when I was 16, 17 to 25. Right. And I had that vision of myself stuck there. But really, we have the ability to do some magnificent things and become athletes as adults, every single one of us. And I think we have to believe we're athletes. We have to believe that, because if you believe you are an athlete, if you believe that you can do hard things, then you can, right? And then you start training like an athlete, even though we're a dad, even though we're a mom, even though we're a business person, an entrepreneur, or whatever you do for work, you can still believe that you're an athlete and treat your body like one, right? Because when you start treating your body like one, then your mind gets to the place that you can operate at your best as a parent, as a mom, as the CEO or whatever your career is, right? But it does start with the body, and we've got to do stuff hard, right? It's just, you don't get better unless you do hard things.
Thanks for joining us for part 1 of our Best of 2024 series on keeping it real estate. We hope that these standout moments from the year inspired you, challenged your thinking, and gave you valuable insights to carry into your own investing journey. But we're not done yet. There's even more to come. So be sure to tune in next week, Tuesday, for part 2, where we'll revisit more of the best conversations and lessons from 2024. And as we look ahead to 2025, we'd love for you to be part of our journey. Join our email list to receive our weekly newsletters packed with real estate insights and updates on our latest investment opportunities. Go over to granitetowersequitygroup.com/invest and fill out the form. We're so excited for what's ahead this year, and we'd love for you to come along for the ride.